Imagine a young athlete who has trained for years, only to suffer an injury right before the biggest competition of their life. In that moment of loss, panic and frustration can easily take over. But Bruce Lee offered a different way to see it. His famous advice was to be like water, to flow around obstacles instead of breaking against them. This simple phrase captures a philosophy that can turn setbacks into opportunities for growth. That philosophy is at the heart of Be Water, My Friend, written by Shannon Lee, Bruce's daughter. As CEO of the Bruce Lee Family Companies, chair of the Bruce Lee Foundation, and host of the Bruce Lee podcast, Shannon has dedicated her life to preserving and sharing her father's wisdom. She explains that she wrote this book because Bruce's teachings have inspired countless people, including herself, and she wanted to make them more accessible. Shannon's own journey adds depth to the book. Raised between Los Angeles and Hong Kong, she studied music, worked as an actress, and eventually chose to carry forward her father's legacy. Her perspective combines personal insight with universal lessons, making Bruce Lee's words practical for everyday life. In the chapters ahead, we'll explore how his teachings on adaptability, purpose, and authenticity can help us all move through life with more clarity and strength. From that introduction to Bruce Lee's way of seeing life, the first lesson naturally flows into the image of water itself. Water is the perfect symbol of adaptability. It has no fixed shape, yet it takes the form of whatever holds it. It can stream gently through narrow cracks, gather into still pools, or crash with the force of a waterfall. When rocks block its path, it does not stop, it simply moves around them, continuing forward with quiet persistence. Over time, water can even carve valleys and shape mountains. This is the essence of strength through flexibility. The author said that Bruce once explained it like this. At its essence, water flows. To be like water is to realize your most whole, natural, and actualized self. The meaning is simple but profound. To be water means you don't let circumstances harden you or shut you down. Instead, you meet challenges as they come, shifting when needed but never losing your forward motion. It is about realizing your true nature by staying fluid, responsive, and alive to change. In daily life, adaptability often feels like a compromise, but this teaching reframes it as power. Imagine someone who trains for a specific career, only to discover that the industry collapses or opportunities dry up. Instead of clinging stubbornly to the plan, they could redirect their skills into a related path and keep moving. This shift is not weakness, it is resilience. To bend without breaking is how growth continues. The author thinks of adaptability in broader terms too, showing how it applies in moments both big and small. Picture a musician who prepares for months for a concert, only to have the venue cancel at the last minute. Rather than giving up, they might live stream the performance from their living room, reaching an even wider audience. In sports, athletes constantly adjust their training when injuries or setbacks occur, proving that staying in motion matters more than sticking to a rigid script. Businesses offer another striking example. One company, Netflix, shifted from mailing DVDs to streaming content online, while a competitor, Blockbuster, refused to adapt and eventually vanished. The difference came down to who flowed like water and who tried to stand immovable against change. Bruce himself embodied this principle many times. When Hollywood producers dismissed him and refused to cast him in leading roles, he didn't stop chasing his dream. He returned to Hong Kong where he made films that turned him into a global icon. Later, when directors tried to edit his work in ways he didn't agree with, he learned the value of creative control and became more intentional about his projects. Even in his martial arts, this adaptability was clear. His practice was not about rigid forms but about fluid responses, using whatever worked in the moment. His art, Jeet Kune Do, was built on this foundation. Absorb what is useful, discard what is not, and add what is your own. The author highlights that to live this way means cultivating 4 qualities: awareness, pliability, purpose, and wholeness. Awareness is noticing when circumstances shift instead of clinging blindly to old plans. Pliability is the willingness to bend without losing form. Purpose ensures that even as you adjust, you remain guided by a clear inner direction. Wholeness means staying true to your full self, not cutting off parts of who you are just to fit in. Each of these qualities brings water's wisdom into everyday choices. A simple way to practice this is through what the author calls water exercises. These are small changes in daily life that train the mind to be flexible. For instance, try taking a different route to work, cooking a new dish, or adjusting your schedule slightly. These minor shifts may seem trivial, but they help build comfort with change. Over time, they remind you that you can handle bigger disruptions with less fear. This teaching also draws on Taoist and Zen traditions. Still water, the author said, reflects clearly because it is calm, undisturbed, and free of turbulence. In the same way, a calm mind can see situations more clearly and respond more wisely. By learning to pause and steady ourselves, we can avoid reacting in panic and instead flow smoothly, like a river that knows its course. Applied today, the idea of being water is more relevant than ever. In careers, industries evolve quickly, and those who adapt thrive while others get left behind. In relationships, flexibility allows people to grow together instead of being torn apart by change. In personal growth, it means being willing to reinvent ourselves when old identities no longer serve us. The lesson is simple: adaptability is not about giving up, but about finding the strength to keep moving in new directions. To live like water is to trust that no matter how many obstacles appear, you can always find a way forward. Flowing like water requires flexibility, but it also requires space to grow. This is where the image of the empty cup comes in. If a cup is already full, nothing more can be poured into it. In the same way, when our minds are crowded with assumptions, pride, or rigid beliefs, there's no room for fresh understanding. To keep learning, we must remain humble and curious, willing to let go of what no longer serves us. The author said Bruce often taught that the path to wisdom comes through openness. His words were clear: research your own experience, reject what is useless, accept what is useful, and add what is essentially your own. This teaching encourages people to treat ideas like experiments. You test them in your own life, keep the parts that work, and discard the rest. It's not about memorizing lessons from a teacher or book, but about building wisdom through lived experience. One of the clearest moments where Bruce lived this lesson came after his famous fight in Oakland. During that battle, he realized that his traditional martial arts training, which relied on fixed forms, left him stiff and restricted. He had won, but the effort showed him his weaknesses. Instead of denying what happened, he treated the fight as feedback. He went back, broke down his training, and began creating a system that was more fluid, practical, and responsive. That shift gave birth to his philosophy of Jeet Kune Do, a style built on adaptability and personal expression. His willingness to empty his cup in that moment unlocked a new level of growth. The image of a sponge helps explain this mindset. A sponge that is already saturated cannot take in more water, but when it is wrung out and clean, it can absorb deeply again. In life, we are the same. By letting go of ego and preconceptions, we create space to soak in new ideas, experiences, and perspectives. Without that emptiness, nothing new can reach us. The author thinks that practical habits can help us cultivate this openness. Journaling is one tool, a place to lay down the thoughts of the day so the mind doesn't stay cluttered. Reflection is another, allowing us to pause and ask what worked, what didn't, and what might be worth trying differently next time. Feedback from others also plays an important role, because sometimes we can't see our own blind spots until someone points them out. These practices don't just clear space, they train us to stay receptive. One simple exercise can make this real in daily life. At the end of each day, jot down one lesson you learned, whether from a success or a failure. It doesn't need to be profound. Even small observations, like noticing that you focus better in the morning, or realizing that a certain approach to a conversation didn't land well, are part of emptying your cup. Over time, this practice builds a habit of lifelong learning. The benefit of living this way is clear. When we refuse to empty the cup, we stagnate. We become fixed in habits and unable to adapt when life changes around us. But when we approach life with curiosity and openness, we grow continually, adding layer upon layer of wisdom. The teaching of the empty cup reminds us that true strength doesn't come from clinging to what we already know, but from making space to learn, unlearn, and evolve. Pursue goals, but stay flowing, purpose and process. From the image of the empty cup, the path naturally turns to the question of what we fill it with. Openness and humility matter, but without direction, they can drift into aimlessness. This is why goals are important. They give us a sense of purpose, a target that keeps us moving forward. Yet the challenge lies in holding those goals lightly, pursuing them with determination while still remaining flexible. Too much rigidity, and the flow of life is blocked. The author said Bruce once expressed this balance in a simple but powerful way. The good life is a process, not a state of being. It is a direction, not a destination. What he meant is that goals should be seen as guides rather than finish lines. A goal points the way, but the real growth happens in the journey itself. If we treat success as a fixed end state, we risk disappointment or frustration when circumstances change. If we treat it as a direction, We can keep moving forward even if the exact path shifts. To explain this, the author uses the image of walking in water. Imagine stepping forward in a stream. The current moves around you, and you must adjust your balance with each step. You may lean against the current, take shorter strides, or change angles slightly, but the key is to keep moving. This is how goals should feel: steady effort, paired with constant adjustment. The aim gives you focus, but the flow of life requires small corrections along the way. Another point the author emphasizes is the idea of co-creation rather than competition. Bruce believed that life is not about beating others, but about creating something meaningful together. He put it simply: life is not a competition, it's a co-creation. This changes the way we think about ambition. Instead of chasing goals as trophies to prove superiority, we pursue them as part of a larger, shared process of growth. Whether in art, work, or personal life, the energy shifts from rivalry to contribution. Bruce himself practiced this philosophy through affirmations and visualization. He would write down statements about who he wanted to become and the projects he dreamed of creating. These were not just wishful thoughts, but deliberate rehearsals of success. By seeing himself achieving his goals, he aligned his mind and body with the effort required to make them real. Visualization, in his practice, was like sketching the outline of a river's course, giving shape to the flow before the water filled it. The author thinks that this practice can be adapted by anyone today. One simple exercise is to create a vision board, a visual map of what matters most to you, whether it is career milestones, personal health, or relationships. Another is a two-step plan. Write down one dream and then list a few flexible actions that can carry you toward it. The key is not to carve the steps in stone, but to see them as stepping stones that can be moved if needed. The dream stays constant, but the path remains open to adjustment. When seen this way, purpose becomes like a river. It flows in a steady direction, but it bends around mountains and stretches wide through valleys. The river never forgets where it is headed, yet it adapts to every obstacle along the way. To pursue goals with this mindset is to hold purpose firmly while letting go of rigid control. The strength lies in knowing where you want to go while trusting yourself to adjust with the current. Living authentically, inner guidance, and personal power. Flowing steadily toward a goal is vital, but the current must also carry us in a direction that feels true to who we are. Without authenticity, progress can feel hollow, like following a map drawn by someone else. The author explains that one of the greatest barriers to living authentically is the voice of the ego, which often disguises itself in the language of obligation. She writes, "One key indicator that the ego is in the driver's seat is the word should. When our choices are ruled by shoulds, we end up living according to other people's expectations instead of our own truth." To counter this, the author encourages us to replace should with choose. The difference may seem small, but it carries a powerful shift in perspective. Saying "I should call this person" feels like a burden, while "I choose to call this person" restores agency. One statement drains energy, the other affirms power. By framing life as a series of conscious choices, we reclaim control from the ego and begin to act from a deeper, more authentic place. The idea of inner guidance runs throughout the book. The author said, "No matter what, you must let your inner light guide you out of the darkness." This light represents intuition, values, and the quiet voice within that knows when something resonates and when it does not. Following it requires courage, especially when the world pressures us to conform. Yet those who trust that inner light often discover not only freedom but also a stronger sense of direction. Dreams play an essential role in this authenticity. The author warns that if you cannot feel a dream in your heart, it may not be your true dream at all. A goal that fails to stir excitement is likely borrowed from someone else's vision of success. Bruce's own life offers evidence of this truth. When he was negotiating for Enter the Dragon, the film that would later make him an international icon, he refused offers that compromised his principles. Hollywood producers wanted control over his image and creative input, but he held firm. He believed in his vision of martial arts on screen, one that highlighted philosophy as much as action. By following his authentic dream, instead of chasing quick approval, he created a film that continues to inspire decades later. In his personal life, authenticity showed itself in quieter ways as well. Bruce chose to marry Linda Emery despite cultural pressures and criticism about their interracial relationship. That decision reflected his refusal to let societal shoulds dictate his happiness. He valued love, respect, and connection over conformity, and that choice shaped the supportive partnership that carried him through the ups and downs of his career. The author also emphasizes the importance of sovereignty. She writes, "Don't give up your sovereignty or personal power. Claim your own path." Sovereignty here means the right to steer your life according to your own compass. It is not about defiance for its own sake, but about honoring the truth of who you are. Without it, adaptability becomes mere drifting, and purpose loses its grounding. With it, you move like a river, fluid yet unmistakably your own. A practical way to begin is to make one decision this week purely for yourself. It could be as simple as choosing how to spend an afternoon without external influence, or as meaningful as voicing a truth you've held back. These small acts train the mind to recognize the difference between should and choose, reminding us that authenticity is practiced in daily steps, not only in life's biggest choices. In the end, authenticity and adaptability are not separate forces but partners. To adapt without authenticity risks losing yourself, while authenticity without adaptability risks becoming rigid. Together, they allow you to flow like water in your own river, moving with strength, flexibility, and integrity toward a life that is truly yours. Living authentically provides the inner compass, but to walk the path requires discipline. The author explains that philosophy only becomes real when translated into daily practice. Bruce Lee was not just a thinker. He was a man who built his ideas into habits, shaping his life with consistent, deliberate actions. These tools form a bridge between lofty principles and everyday choices, reminding us that small, steady steps create transformation. One of the practices the author highlights is what she calls take aim, take action. Bruce believed that each day should include at least one definite step toward a meaningful goal. The idea is not to overwhelm yourself with grand leaps, but to move forward with steady progress. If you want to write, it could be one page each day. If you want better health, it might be one nutritious meal or one workout. By focusing on one clear action daily, momentum builds, just as water gains force by flowing continuously rather than in sporadic bursts. Another tool is the use of affirmations and symbols. Bruce often wrote affirmations about his vision of success, not just as empty words, but as a way of directing his energy. Visualization played a role too, as he mentally rehearsed the outcomes he wanted to achieve. These exercises strengthened belief and helped align his actions with his aspirations. The author thinks that personal symbols can serve the same purpose. A small object on your desk or a phrase written on your wall can remind you of your larger direction. These tangible cues reinforce inner focus and keep goals alive in daily awareness. Journaling was another cornerstone of Bruce's growth. His notebooks, filled with reflections, training notes, and philosophical insights, reveal how he used writing to track his evolution. The author said that journaling helps us notice patterns, record lessons, and release emotions that might otherwise cloud our judgment. By putting thoughts on paper, the mind clears, and we can return to challenges with sharper perspective. Even a few sentences at the end of the day can make a difference, capturing insights before they slip away. Physical training also held deep significance for Bruce. To him, the body and mind were not separate but interconnected. Exercise was more than building muscle, it was a way to discipline the spirit. Pushing physical limits trained resilience, showing the mind that it could overcome discomfort and persist through difficulty. The author emphasizes that getting physical doesn't need to mean extreme workouts. It could be a daily walk, stretching, or any movement that connects you to your body. The key is consistency, turning motion into a ritual that strengthens both body and will. Underlying all these practices is the principle of repetition. Just as water carves stone through steady contact, habits shape character through daily persistence. A single workout or journal entry may not transform you, but the accumulation over weeks and months gradually rewrites who you are. The author believes that discipline is less about force and more about rhythm, like water returning again and again until it leaves its mark. To bring these ideas to life, the challenge is simple. Choose two of these tools and commit to practicing them this week. It could be daily journaling combined with a short physical routine, or affirmations paired with one clear action toward a goal. By experimenting, you discover what resonates and build habits that reflect your own path. In this way, philosophy is no longer abstract but lived, showing that authenticity and adaptability find their true power when grounded in consistent practice. Looking back, the journey through these teachings shows a pattern of adaptability, openness, purposeful direction, authenticity, and steady habits. Each idea reflects a way to live more fluidly, especially in a world marked by constant change and mounting pressures. I once caught myself saying I should take on a task I didn't want, but when I reframed it as a choice, the weight lifted and I felt more in control. The author reminds us to adapt what is useful and release what is not. Be water this week, flexible, authentic, and unstoppable.